Just look at all that ground in grime.
I can't see anything shifting that.
Don't tell me. These stubborn stains are impossible now.
Sorry, love.
This grease, it hasn't budged. It just never gets deep down clean, does it?
Typical. They've never heard of Shell Advanced Petrol.
Yeah. It's got special detergents that actually clean your engine while you're driving.
Exactly. And if you use it regular, it can improve your car's performance.
Do you think they'd know that?
Of course you would.
Right, see you next week, lads.
Do you know where this goes?
Shell Advanced Petrol cleans your engine as you drive.
At Yorkshire Electricity, we're selling our camcorders at very competitive prices. Buy one now and you don't have to pay a penny until February. This Sharp comes with a 12-time zoom and a colour viewfinder, making it a knockout purchase. So for this Sharp camcorder, you'll find Yorkshire Electricity are un-YE beatable.
Confidently, casually, precariously, hopefully, lovingly, smoothly, creamily, uniquely, Tetley, Yorkshire's pint.
She's done it again. She knows what she's doing. She's got Horse Sense. Now Horse Sense has been republished. Every week there are lessons for beginners with easy-to-follow step-by-step instructions and lessons for more experienced riders with lots of advice on how to take care of a pony so that it stays well and happy. In fact, you'll find everything you want to know about horses, and you get this useful wall chart of well-known breeds free with Part 1 of Horse Sense.
This is a new experience for me.
There's always a first time.
Nice. Very nice.
Believe it or not, plenty of people prefer Coffee Mate.
Don't hope nothing here.
Too late. This lift has just entered the Twiglet Zone, dedicated to the enjoyment of those knobbly, crunchy snacks, whole wheat, savoury, and dangerously irresistible.
We apologise for all the delay. Somebody's opened a bag of Twiglets between stations.
Sorry, lads. There are some unopened Twiglets in there.
Beware the Twiglet Zone. Easy to enter, impossible to leave.
It's the biggest day of Snaps Provolone's life.
I got till noon to look like a banker.
And everything is going wrong. The cops are moving in. His daughter is moving out.
Did he tell you I was pregnant?
And Snaps is falling apart.
Zip it.
Sylvester Stallone, Oscar.
At a cinema near you from Friday.
Kellogg's Crunchy Nut Cornflakes. Golden flakes of corn encrusted with honey, nuts and brown sugar. Altogether, quite irresistible. Kellogg's Crunchy Nut Cornflakes. The trouble is they taste too good.
This Thursday, the cameras return to Jimmy's.
We have 82,000 new patients a year coming through here, of which I would estimate that certainly no more than 30,000 need to be in casualty.
Then disturbance on the streets for the bill.
Sounds like it's getting a bit nasty out there. Yeah? One of the skippers from Barton Street's been taken to hospital.
What the hell was that? Oh, like a bomb going on.
And watch out, Arthur Daly's back in town.
Haven't you heard? I'm into Europe. Those doppelgangers moving all right, Dave?
Oh, the bangers, yeah, very nice they are.
2 new programmes for Thursday on Yorkshire.
At 10:40 tonight, there's soccer action with the European match, featuring highlights from the second leg of the preliminary round in the European Cup Winners' Cup between Spurs and Stockerau of Austria. And at 11:40, there's a change to our advertised programmes with Joyriders, an investigation into Britain's fastest-growing crime, car theft. First, the news at 10.
Lamont's interest rate cut boosts talk of a November poll.
Major shocked by the tragedy of the boat people. Gorbachev close to securing a union of independent republics. Greenpeace say Gulf oil spill damage is beyond repair. And where nearly half the car thieves are out on bail. Good evening. Bank interest rates came down another 0.5% today, firing speculation that the government just might be thinking about a general election in November. There hasn't been a November election since 1935. The Prime Minister in Hong Kong was non-committal, but said economic prospects were now better than for many months. Labour's campaign coordinator, Dr. John Cunningham, said the government was blatantly preparing to cut and run. Still, Mr. Kinnock said November the 7th would suit him just fine. The 0.5% cut, the 8th cut since last October, brought the base lending rate down to 10.5%. Some building societies immediately cut their rates. The pound was unchanged overall, but closed up 0.25 cent against the American dollar.
The city was caught on the hop by today's news. Analysts had been expecting a cut at the end of next week, when they predict inflation will dip below 5%. The Chancellor's decision means the base rate has dropped by more than 4% in 12 months. At this time last year, interest rates stood at 15%. There was a 1% cut in October with Britain's entry to the ERM. Since then, rates have fallen steadily to today's 10.5%.
It will, I hope, consolidate the very marked improvement in confidence that we've seen in recent weeks. Above all, it reflects the cautious and prudent approach that we've taken in the management of the economy and our success in getting inflation down. Inflation is set to fall further in the next few months, and that is the best possible news for the British economy.
The Chancellor's initiative is a timely boost for the housing industry. Only this morning, construction giants Wimpey were reporting a massive fall in profits for the first half of this year. The cut welcomed too by the building societies. Within hours, the Abbey National and the Halifax had announced cuts in their basic mortgage rate. But at Westminster, the news was greeted with some scepticism.
This has got a lot to do with keeping their options open for a November election. We'd like to see interest rates decided by an independent Central European bank, where the politicians and their interests were kept at bay from the more important interests of the economy as a whole.
Possibly now the Prime Minister and Chancellor have decided to try and get 1 full point off base rates, half today and another half point by the Conservative Party conference, with the possibility that they may now be going for a November election.
A look at some of the key factors in previous Tory election victories show government policies which might indicate a November poll. Interest rates before the 1983 and 87 elections are similar to the November prediction at 10%. Inflation is expected to be close to the 83 figure, but lower than 87 at 3.8%. And unemployment. During the last 2 elections it was around 3 million. In November it's predicted at 2.5 million. Add to that the personal standing of John Major. The past 10 days have seen him maintain the highest of profiles as he crossed from the United States to China, a player on the international stage. But the opposition remained buoyant. Today, the Labour leader said that an election couldn't come soon enough.
What we know is that they would like to have an election this side of Christmas, mainly to avoid the continuing effects of the recession and to try to avoid the political impact that will come upon them of bringing in next year's poll tax as well.
Today's cut in interest rates is seen as a bid to woo the voters. But although last weekend's opinion poll put the Tories ahead of Labour, John Major may wish to ensure that his party can retain that lead before he gives his campaign teams the go-ahead. Robert Hall, News at 10, Westminster.
The Prime Minister flew to Hong Kong from the Chinese capital Beijing today, where his remarks on human rights seem to have had some effect. China has agreed to free one of the political prisoners whose cases Mr. Major raised. In Hong Kong, the Prime Minister went to a camp for Vietnamese boat people and heard criticism of the Hong Kong airport deal, which he signed yesterday with China. He was told he'd allowed China too much influence.
John Major went to see the Great Wall this morning. At least that was the idea. Now, in fact, with the wall at this point being on top of a mountain and with the cloud base being very low, he didn't see very much. No matter, for on another front, the issue of human rights, there was something to lift Mr. Major's spirits. It emerged that Chinese Premier Li Peng, to whom Mr. Major made his farewells today, had not in fact taken as hard a line on human rights yesterday as all the Chinese talk about bullying and humiliation might have suggested. For it emerged that during the talks yesterday, the Chinese said that this man, Lo Haixing, one of the Hong Kong detainees in China, seen here being questioned after his arrest in Canton, and for whom Mr. Major had made representations, would be released on bail because he's ill. But Mr. Major must give his attention to another problem while he's here. Hong Kong now houses 62,000 Vietnamese boat people, and the Prime Minister got quite a welcome from a very large number of them at one of the camps where they're all held under close guard. Their living conditions are barely tolerable. They live on what are virtually shelves piled on top of one another. The Prime Minister's been quick to praise the way that Hong Kong looks after these people. Mr. Major had already said that he wanted to see for himself a problem which he encountered first during his brief time as Foreign Secretary.
However much sophisticated briefing you can obtain, it is always necessary to see for yourself what is happening. And that, of course, was why I principally wanted to come this evening, and I'm very glad that I did.
Flying away from the camp and then across the remarkable sight of the Hong Kong skyline at night must have brought the Prime Minister's thoughts back to the future of this spectacular example of working capitalism. Opinions divided here about Mr. Major's talks yesterday in Beijing and about the deal on the new Hong Kong airport. Businessmen, for example, have welcomed the visit there.
I think we're all delighted that he went to Beijing and took the trouble of going there, because I think it's high time we get on with the airport. Hong Kong needs the airport, because if we want to maintain Hong Kong as an international business center, we must get on and build the airport.
But among those who attended a dinner at Government House tonight with the Prime Minister was one of the most outspoken politicians in Hong Kong, Martin Lee. He says that the airport deal and such detailed contacts with China are wrong.
I raised with the Prime Minister my fear that Hong Kong will be losing its high degree of autonomy because of this accord on the new airport. And I also told him my worries that there would not be any democratic development between now and 1997.
And Mr. Lee is not the only person who thinks that way here, and so part of John Major's job tomorrow will be to persuade the people of Hong Kong that consultation now with the Chinese is not only a good idea, but a very necessary one. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Hong Kong.
President Gorbachev's advisers are meeting tonight in an effort to ensure the Congress of People's Deputies will accept his plans for the new union. After a day of careful negotiation, it seems certain that the proposals will be accepted by the deputies tomorrow, just one day later than expected. President Gorbachev is reported to be ready to use his presidential decree to recognize the 3 Baltic republics.
The death throes of the Soviet Union spread anger and confusion in the Congress of People's Deputies today as Mr. Gorbachev tried to force through a program of constitutional reform. He called 2 lengthy adjournments in the hope of curtailing debate, banishing bewildered deputies to smoke-filled corridors where they grappled with decisions that will end their own role as the leading legislators in the land.
They have to not be afraid to lose a job.
There were more rowdy scenes when they returned, Mr. Gorbachev struggling to retain order in the face of furious protests. The people will never forgive you, warned the hardliner Colonel Viktor Auksnis. In the end, the vote was inconclusive. A draft law restructuring the government failed to win the necessary 2/3 majority. But a resolution acknowledging the rights of republics to secede was passed. It's now hoped overnight negotiations will produce a settlement tomorrow. Tonight, the Baltic republics appeared to have won what they want. Officials said Mr. Gorbachev would recognize their independence.
To reject it would be going against the tide of events all over the world to such an extent that it would certainly be very counterproductive worldwide.
Politicians here are being asked to make momentous decisions, but in the end, the union will splinter with or without them. The best they can hope for is to impose some semblance of order on a process that already has its own inevitable momentum. Tim Hewitt, News at 10, Moscow.
The American Secretary of State, Mr. James Baker, says he hopes to visit the Baltic republics next week during a trip to the Soviet Union. Mr. Baker is going to Moscow to lend American support to the latest reforms. The British Foreign Office Minister, Mr. Douglas Hogg, has arrived in Latvia from Lithuania on his tour around the republics. He told the Lithuanians that Britain was happy to talk about the gold bullion they entrusted to the Bank of England before the Second World War.
With no embassy yet established, the Foreign Minister, Douglas Hogg, was treated to breakfast in the Lithuanian government guest house, formerly used by Communist Party bosses. Outside, the Union Jack was placed beside the Lithuanian flag for the first time in 50 years. Mr. Hogg's first view of the Parliament was through a still heavily guarded roadblock. It was something which clearly moved the minister.
It demonstrates the threats which the Parliament and the congressmen face and the courage that they showed in resisting the threats from the Soviets. It's a very poignant reminder.
But his talks with President Landsbergis focused on the question of compensation for Lithuanian gold, which Britain held before the Second World War and later sold to the Soviets. That deal also involved payments for this former embassy building in the town of Kaunas, occupied by the Soviets in 1940. Today, Mr. Hogg said Britain would be flexible on the gold.
Well, the value in 1990 was, I think, 112 million. That represented the gold holdings of the three Baltic republics.
And is that the sort of sum you might consider paying back?
Well, as I say, we're going to have talks in London very soon, and we are approaching it in a constructive frame of mind.
Before going on to the other Baltic states, Mr. Hogg laid flowers outside the Parliament to commemorate those who died in the struggle for Lithuanian independence. Libby Wiener, News at 10 in Vilnius.
President de Klerk of South Africa today published his national party's ideas for a new democratic constitution. Black South Africans would get the vote, but not outright power. Votes would be weighted to protect minorities like the whites. The ANC said it was a recipe for disaster. President de Klerk said these were proposals, not a final offer. He suggests three main tiers of government. At the top, a weaker 3- or 5-member presidency comprising the leaders of the biggest parties and with a rotating chairmanship. Below that, a 2-chamber parliament. The first house, elected by proportional representation, would pass laws, and a second house, with members from each of the 9 regions, would have veto powers. Finally, 9 new regions, each with legislative councils elected by PR, would replace the current 4 provisional governments.
Delegates arriving at the conference this morning were preparing for the most dramatic change in national party policy. For the first time, black delegates sitting alongside white party members, looking to a future South Africa where President de Klerk's own job would disappear.
We are convinced that concentration of power in the hands of a single person as head of state, as in our present system, is the major single factor bedeviling the cooperation we so badly require.
The proposal also recommends the abolition of the 4 independent homelands, long seen as the structure on which apartheid is based. Since beginning talks with the government last year, the African National Congress has made the abolition of the homelands one of its key demands. But while the organisation agrees with some of President de Klerk's proposals, it fundamentally opposes the idea of an enforced coalition government.
We don't believe that coalitions need to be legislated into constitutions on top of that. That coalitions should arise out of the ordinary business of politics. And also the question of the 5 rotating heads of states. That seems to suggest that we will never have a functioning central government.
For the first time, the government is recommending a constitution based on 1 man, 1 vote. The checks and balances surrounding those proposals will undoubtedly be changed at a future multi-party conference. But in coming this far, President de Klerk has made it clear he is now prepared to share power with the black majority. Judy Aslett, News at 10, Bloemfontein.
The environmental pressure group Greenpeace say the beaches of Saudi Arabia, polluted by oil spills in the Gulf War, are beyond repair. They say the cleanup was too small and too slow. A report in part 2. Plus, Oxford police put the brakes on Hotting. And Noriega's grandson is not alone in hoping his grandfather's trial fails. That's in a couple of minutes.
One finger can give you back your
your ideal driving position? Should little fingers rob you of it? Computerized ergonomics from BMW.
When I was a lad, there were only one brown bread for me, and that were always. I were weaned on it, schooled on it. I went to work on it. So it came as quite a shock when Ovis brought out a white slice loaf. But I might get over it.
Ovis, as good today as it's always been.
Philips Whirlpool at Comet. Fridge freezers, auto washers, dishwashers and tumble dryers now with interest-free credit. So get your skates on. You know where to come.
Marry me?
To act on the spur of the moment, you'll need a savings account that can do the same. Instant access from Abbey National.
This Saturday?
The habit of a lifetime.
Go Cat. Scrumptiously crunchy. Tantalizingly tasty. Devilishly delicious. Cats will go to any lengths for Frisky's Go Cat. How far will your cat go?
I want to be like Mummy. I want to be a slug. I want to be first. I want to be last. I want to be out late.
I want to be in a place of my own.
Oh, I want to be a man.
I want to be my own boss.
I want to be indoors.
I want to be gone. Whatever you want to be in life, you want to be with Prudential.
Come on, all together, teamwork. Get stuck in. I want you to give it 100%. Shredded wheat is 100% whole wheat. No added sugar or salt. Just all the original brand fibre goodness. Come on, who's been eating 3?
Not me, boss.
Not me, boss. Not me. Shredded wheat and small shredded wheat. 100% whole wheat.
The huge oil spill in the Gulf back in January during the Gulf War has left the coastline of Saudi Arabia practically beyond repair, Greenpeace said today. They've had a study team in the area for the last 3 weeks. The team says the cleanup process is too small and too slow. Peter Sharp at ITN reports.
The war may have ended 6 months ago, but the environmental effect of the conflict can be seen along mile after mile of Saudi Arabian coastline. Huge stretches of beaches were today declared beyond repair. Oil was found covering the shore from the high tide mark well into the shallow water. A Greenpeace team have just completed a 3-week environmental study of the coast near the Kuwait border, discovered that in some cases the oil had penetrated more than a foot into the sand. This was how we found these same beaches on the morning of January 25th. Millions of barrels of oil gurgling ashore as a huge slick some 30 miles long moved slowly down the coast from the ruptured storage tanks near Kuwait City. The first victims of the disaster struggling to escape from its grip. 6 months later, marine life is still dying. Each time a bird dies for food, its feathers become coated in oil. The Saudis estimate 30,000 birds, most of them cormorants, have died since the oil washed ashore in January. Greenpeace says the worst oil pollution was found in the shallow, sheltered bays which make up most of the Saudi coastline. The oil has formed a sticky, impenetrable coating that extends well above the high water mark.
Under a midday sun still obscured by smoke from the burning oil fields, the shrimp fishing boats remain at anchor. The season's been delayed for 2 months due to underweight shrimp, just part of the disturbance caused by the spill. In its 3 weeks in Saudi Arabia, Greenpeace says it encountered just one clean-up effort. Labourers clearing one small section of beach with shovels and barrows. The oil they dumped on sand dunes. This spill, compared to the Exxon Valdez disaster, is far greater. The Alaska spill attracted 11,000 clean-up personnel and $2 billion in cash. By comparison, says Greenpeace, the Gulf spill clean-up is equivalent to a mop and 2 buckets.
Northumbria Police said today that 4 out of 10 crimes reported to them are committed by people out on bail. They think that matches the national trend. In Oxford, a man has been charged tonight with grievous bodily harm against Mr. Melvin Davies. He was the man who was badly beaten after trying to stop high-speed car stunts outside his home on Monday night. There were street disturbances in Oxford again last night.
In Oxford last night, they came looking for a show, and it arrived in the shape of a red maestro. Despite policemen on every corner, the young man at the wheel went through his routine of so-called crazy driving. Only when he roared off did the riot squad move in. Later, police said a man was being questioned in connection with a driving display. In Cardiff, the Assistant Chief Constable said some of those involved in the disturbances there were well known to the police and had already been charged with other offences.
Yeah, you know, we've had people arrested who've been bailed by the courts, who've been made the subject of curfews, and then when we've gone along the following night to police the situation, they have been seen out and about in total breach of their curfew.
Today, a Chief Constable called for the tightening up of the bail procedure. Detailed research in the Newcastle area shows 40% of those arrested were out on bail at the time.
The right to bail should be graduated, as it always must be. Would you let a mad animal loose? You wouldn't, you would keep it up. You would keep it confined.
Joyriding has reached epidemic proportions in the northeast. Northumbria's research shows nearly half of those involved had been given bail by the courts. The police argue that the cost of keeping people locked up should be balanced against the misery they cause. The Home Office has commissioned its own research and cites bail hostels as one answer to keep those accused of crimes out of further trouble. Evidence from Newcastle seems to support the idea.
Most of your time in the bail hostel is took up by various activities. I mean, you're away from your friends and people you would normally associate with, who you would normally commit crimes with. So being here, you don't see your friends that often, so obviously you're not going to commit crimes.
The police say the relatively new crime of ram raiding often involves those who've already been arrested and allowed temporary freedom. They say new rules are urgently needed to stop persistent offenders being able to commit further crimes. Jim Buchanan, News at 10, Newcastle.
There was no let-up in the fighting in the Yugoslav Republic of Croatia today, though Croatian, Serbian and federal leaders all said they'd go to the European Community Peace Conference at the weekend. Serbs and federal troops cut the main Zagreb-Belgrade highway near Okukani, isolating the eastern part of Croatia. Osijek, Croatia's fourth town, was almost encircled by Serbian fighters.
The vital highway between Zagreb and Belgrade was at a standstill tonight. Serbian militiamen had reportedly taken control after a gun battle with Croatians and set up roadblocks. No traffic was allowed to pass. It was a serious blow to Croatia, not only severing its main trade artery to the south, but effectively cutting the republic in two, as the Serbians attempted to redefine Croatia's borders. They also seemed intent on crippling Croatia's economy. Today, there were attacks on a steelworks and an oil refinery near Sisak. The continued fighting has made a mockery of the ceasefire. Behind the barricades, Croatian part-time guardsmen shored up their defences against the relentless Serbian advance, too busy to even care about Europe's peace plan. They don't believe it has a hope. As they patrolled the front line around Osijek, there was a lull in the fighting, but the damage had already been done. Osijek Hospital was filled with the dead and injured. At least 14 had been killed in one day's violence. Yet again, the Croatians blame the Federal Army for starting it and supporting the Serbians. This latest aggression by the Serbians could be a last-ditch effort to strengthen their hand before they're forced to the negotiating table, or it could be a quite deliberate attempt to sabotage the ceasefire. Either way, it doesn't augur too well for the peace process. Jeremy Thompson, News at 10, Zagreb.
The trial of the former Panamanian dictator General Manuel Noriega will begin in Miami tomorrow. He faces 10 charges, including drug trafficking, racketeering and money laundering. His only other co-defendant, a pilot who flew the drugs, has struck a deal with the prosecutors and will now give evidence against Noriega.
Inside the cell known as the Dictator's Suite, Manuel Antonio Noriega and his attorney work on their defense strategy. Noriega still wears his general's uniform, the last trappings from the days when his people called him the maximum leader. Bringing Noriega to court required what was probably the most expensive manhunt in history. 21 months ago, President Bush ordered the invasion of Panama to capture the man blamed for flooding America with cocaine. It's the first time a foreign leader has been put on trial in the United States. The case is seen as a test of the government and President Bush himself.
The prosecutors really have to win this one. It would be almost unheard of after we invaded Panama and captured a head of state, brought him to trial, and then lose the case.
Noriega's lawyer is promising embarrassment for the Bush administration. He'll argue that the dictator's drug dealings were conducted with the knowledge and blessing of the American government, and that General Noriega was on the CIA payroll at a time George Bush was head of the CIA. Most of the evidence against Noriega will come from men who used to work for him. Today, pilot Daniel Miranda became the latest of the general's co-defendants to agree to testify for the prosecution in return for lenient sentences. General Noriega's lawyer says his client is being denied a fair trial. Leaked tapes prove that the state has been eavesdropping on confidential telephone calls between the jailed dictator and his legal advisors.
It's the most great violation of his constitutional rights I've ever seen.
The general's wife and family have been allowed into America to follow the trial. 2-year-old John Manuel Noriega, who likes to impersonate his notorious grandfather, could have many months to wait for a verdict. The Bush administration are trying to play this down as a simple drugs case, not a political trial. But the potential for embarrassment is high, with the defense team promising revelations of CIA involvement in the murky world of international drug smuggling and gun running. Paul Davis, News at 10, Washington.
Soccer, 9 of tonight's matches, including Spurs' European Cup Winners' Cup game, are on ITV after this news. The other results: Barclays League Division 1, Luton 2, Southampton 1, Queen's Park Rangers 0, West Ham 0. Division 2, Leicester 2, Grimsby 0, Oxford 1, Middlesbrough 2. Division 3, Huddersfield 2, Chester 0, Stoke 1, Shrewsbury 0. Division 4, Hereford 2, Gillingham 0, Lincoln 0, Barnet 6. In Scotland, the Skull Cup 4th round, Hearts 0, Rangers the Holders 1, Ali McCoist got it, and one rugby union result at Cardiff Arms Park, Wales 9, France 22.
Tonight's Men News again. Bank interest rates were cut by 0.5% today, fueling speculation that there might be an election in November. In South Africa, President de Klerk has put forward plans for a new constitution. It would give black people the vote but deny them outright power. And police are tonight questioning a man about the murder of the prostitute Sharon Hall and the attempted murder of another prostitute, Lucy Christopher.
And that's News at 10. From Trevor and from me, a very good night to you.
This man is the KGB's boss in Lithuania. His agents are deserting, and very soon he'll be looking for another job. This man was the KGB's chairman. Now he's under interrogation on a charge of high treason. This week reports on the breakup of what was the world's most feared secret service, following the collapse of the Moscow coup. And we talk exclusively to the KGB's new boss about his plans to reform it. That's Smashing the KGB on This Week, tomorrow night at 8:30 on ITV.
She's done it again. She knows what she's doing. She's got Horse Sense. Now Horse Sense has been republished. Every week there are lessons for beginners with easy-to-follow step-by-step instructions and lessons for more experienced riders, with lots of advice on how to take care of a pony so that it stays well and happy. In fact, you'll find everything you want to know about horses, and you get this useful wall chart of well-known breeds free with Part 1 of Horse Sense.
My husband says I drink too much coffee. He thinks I should cut down on caffeine.
Relax, darling, lighten up.
So I started drinking Café Hague. The only thing it hasn't got is caffeine.
Must go, darling.
And you know, I do notice the difference.
Bye.
Like just now, he's off again to the garden centre. Do I fret and fuss? I do not. I just go right back to snipping and pruning. I'm totally relaxed. Café Hague. When coffee tastes this good, who needs caffeine?
For so many of those difficult, dried-in stains, there's a modern pre-wash treatment. Vanish.
In the summertime, when the weather is hot, you'll be sure to survive just so long as you've got a juicy, outspan. When the sun beats down and you're cruising the street, take this cool advice, get the drink that you eat. Grab an outspan, small ones are more juicy naturally. Grab an outspan, 'cause small ones are more juicy naturally.
So you can tell us apart. He sounds different. Do I? I see what you mean.
She does it.
I do it.
They do it.
He needs it.
We certainly do it.
He does it. Together we've done it.
Now everyone can afford to do their bit with Dixel 100% recycled family value. Tissues that don't cost the earth.
Tonight, Edward Woodward is called on to protect a blind girl in The Equalizer, which we're showing at the later-than-advertised time of 12:10.
Hello, good evening. After yet another day of baking temperatures. But from now on, it is all change on the weather front, with things beginning to cool off. And that's all because that cold front that managed to sneak into north of Scotland today, and it'll sink even further southwards tomorrow, so temperatures in Scotland take a bit of a tumble, but the south manages to hang on to that hot weather. Looking beyond that at Friday, and it's a case of temperatures everywhere taking a dip as the high pressure moves way off the scene, and there'll be bits and pieces of rain around. At least that's good news for some of us. Tomorrow gets off to a repeat performance of today's weather with a lot of mist and fog lurking about and the very best of the early morning sunshine out to the west. Then, just like today, the sun soon gets to work on all that mist and fog, beginning to burn it off. But already we see the cloud attached to that cold front very much in evidence in the far north that sinks southwards as the day wears on, getting into Northern Ireland, northern and eastern England. Elsewhere, the day ends on a fairly fine note. As for temperatures, we see a big difference in Scotland. Now, bear in mind today,
These have been dismantled, both sides fulfilling their commitments. But the START treaty, covering long-range nuclear weapons, just signed, has yet to be ratified by legislators in either Moscow or Washington. The process of destroying the weapons has not begun and will take years to achieve. Mr. Gorbachev's willingness to give up Soviet control over Eastern Europe earned him particular praise in the West. The collapse of the Berlin Wall was the most powerful symbol, but there were revolutions from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Soviet troops were not ordered to shore up the dying communist regimes. Instead, they began to pack up and head home. There are still some left, notably in Germany and Poland, but enough to rebuild the Soviet empire? Probably not. But the current Soviet-American initiative, the search for peace in the Middle East, must now be in jeopardy. The Gulf crisis had shown James Baker the power of the alliance to influence events in the Middle East. He and his Soviet counterpart had begun preparing for a Middle East peace conference in October. That may no longer be a priority in Moscow. There's talk tonight, particularly from the French, of a full summit of European heads of government. But the EC has just received a sharp reminder of the limits of its power. EC efforts to influence events in Yugoslavia came to little. The crisis in the Soviet Union is of an altogether greater order. Edward Sturton, News at 10 at ITN headquarters.
A row is developing over whether the government should go ahead with its planned cuts in the armed forces, now that there's a new finger on the trigger in Moscow. Mr. Major says there's no need to halt the Options for Change review, as it's called. Others, including the former Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, say it should be suspended immediately.
40,000 British soldiers are due to lose their jobs under the government's cuts. Last week, MPs warned that money saving could be driving the changes rather than political reality. Today, support for a rethink came from former Prime Minister Mrs. Thatcher.
Those cuts which were going to be implemented should not be implemented now. We must pause to see what happens.
Moscow says it will complete the withdrawal of its soldiers from Europe, the process that has made arms cuts possible. They also say they'll stick to existing arms agreements. In Germany, 270,000 troops are still to go, 50,000 from Poland, all by 1994. The 65,000 in Hungary are already out, 70,000 gone from Czechoslovakia. Pegged to their departure, the cutting by half of Britain's 50,000-strong Rhine Army. Defence Secretary Tom King says Britain's force reductions will proceed.
Our changes take place over the next 3 to 4 years. During that time, the Soviet Union will be due to have withdrawn all the remaining forces that it has, already out of Czechoslovakia and Hungary, as I said, out of Poland in 2 years' time, finish their withdrawal out of Germany in the year after that. And we shall watch, as we make our reductions, that they are carrying forward their plans as well.
In Brussels today, NATO ambassadors warned the Soviet Union of serious consequences if it abandoned reform, but there'll be no rush to a change of strategy.
They've got time in which to think before they rethink, because few of the defence cuts which have recently been planned need to be implemented for at least a year, and some not for 3 or 4 years. So no immediate decisions have to be taken. So whilst they'll be considering certainly worst-case scenarios, they won't have to do anything yet.
Within the British military, however, the Soviet crisis may well provoke new demands that the cuts to the forces should not be so deep.
The German Chancellor Helmut Kohl has warned the Kremlin's new leadership that it must carry on with Mr. Gorbachev's reforms or lose any further German aid. Mr. Gorbachev is still idolized by many Germans who believe he made German unity possible. There are still more than 250,000 Red Army troops in East Germany.
Germans from East and West Berlin tonight marched in sombre protest through the Brandenburg Gate, the symbol of their newfound unity. The apparent demise of the man who helped make reunification possible had shocked the German people. On the Soviet embassy wall, they'd pasted up Mikhail Gorbachev's portrait. Germans had always been his most ardent Western supporters. In response to his easing of controls in the Eastern Bloc, the Bonn government had already pledged over £10 billion in aid to the Soviet Union. Now that relationship was under threat. Like most Berliners, this man was horrified. We have a lot to thank Gorbachev for. Maybe we should have given him more help.
So we're very, very angry and very sad about the situation.
I thought that it will be okay, that there will be building a democratic state, and now there is military.
Germans are well aware that nearly 300,000 Soviet troops are still based on their soil. Today, the Red Army soldiers were confined to their barracks in and around Berlin. In a statement from their headquarters here, the Soviet military command said the withdrawal of troops from East Germany would continue as planned. But it's known Moscow hardliners were against the pullout. Now this Red Army may well be under their control, and it's bound to revive anxious memories for Germany. It was 30 years ago this week that they started building the Berlin Wall. Today, this symbol of the East-West divide has almost been demolished. But for all Germans, today's events in Moscow have once more raised the spectre of a Cold War barrier. Jeremy Thompson, News at 10, Berlin.
Mr. Gorbachev's fall has been presented to the Soviet people as caused by his failures. The empty shelves that forecast the coup, a report next. Plus, Mrs. Thatcher tells the Russians, get out and stop the communists. And how the Russian families see the fall of Gorbachev. That's in a couple of minutes.
I'm here to tell you about risky motoring.
Me too, Tommy, me too. This is risky, this is risky. Make 'em have it, Tommy, lad.
Some people risk buying a used car when they could quite easily afford a brand new Lada. You can drive away any new Lada for only £99 deposit. Typical APR, 19.5. Did you know that, Bobby?
No, I didn't. No.
Well, you do now.
Yes.
Or only £99 a month. And you know what else, Bobby?
What's that, Tommy?
You're covered.
I'm not, you know.
Yes, you are. Your payments are covered against accidents, sickness, redundancy, and you even get free life insurance. And no need to risk third-party insurance either. You get 1 year's fully comprehensive insurance for only £99. And they're guaranteed for 2 years or 50,000 miles. So there you have it. Nothing can go wrong. Can it, Bobby?
Don't expose yourself to unnecessary risks. Buy a brand new Lada and make sure you're covered.
You've ruined it, haven't you? I thought you said risque, Tommy. I thought you said risque.
I do solemnly swear to do what's right by these four walls. I shall arm myself with Dulux weather shield sand-textured paint with its unique ICI durable polymer. I shall not stint, nor skimp, nor corners cut. Unlike the bandit who did me guttering. For here shall I stand in days to come and say, I did that.
The fossilized remains of the strange and terrible dinosaurs are featured on these remarkable new stamps from the Royal Mail, on sale from August the 20th onwards. They're also available in this special presentation pack, which includes a child's free ticket to the Natural History Museum. Royal Mail stamps, beautiful gifts you'll want to keep.
I don't think this is going to work.
You may be right.
We don't seem to have much in common.
I know. I hate opera, you hate jazz.
And I loathe modern art.
It's my job.
So, about the only thing we do have in common is...
Our taste in coffee.
Golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
Hello.
I want to see you. Now.
Oh, this itch. I can't sleep.
Lanacane will stop it fast.
Lanacane will. Lanacane helps shut off the itch like a switch. Fast. Look, Lanacane quiets itch nerves on contact. So for really fast relief from all kinds of itching, get Lanacane.
Lanacane does help shut off the itch.
Like a switch. Fast.
The Soviet Union's new ruling committee said its overriding concerns were more food and improved living standards, two things Mr. Gorbachev's reforms hadn't delivered. Rumours about replacing him began on Friday. Nick Gowing, diplomatic editor of ITN's Channel 4 News, reports on why the hardliners made their move today.
Daily life in the Soviet Union has become a painful, expensive economic lottery.
Many are forced to sell whatever they can for whatever they can get, just to secure enough rubles to pay for basics like food. Even the well-qualified have taken to the streets to supplement their inadequate wages. In recent months, well-heeled gangs of mafia-style racketeers and profiteers have moved in to take control of markets, demand protection money, and to exploit the collapse into virtual economic anarchy, where the old state system has disintegrated to be replaced by unregulated chaos. This backdoor economy was outlawed under old-style communism, and the Conservatives who took control today want this failure by Gorbachev to be replaced by a new discipline, which they believe, with some reason, that many Soviets now yearn for. When he resigned last December, the former Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze had predicted this conservative backlash. For several months, military hardliners like Colonel Auksnis warned that military action was imminent. In London last month, President Gorbachev called such threats the fruits of democracy. And an attempt by Prime Minister Pavlov in June to remove President Gorbachev's power over the economy was aggressively thwarted by Gorbachev himself by warning of the threat from conservatives. With the power of individual republics growing and the signing of the new Union Treaty due tomorrow, a treaty which, with tacit acceptance in the West, would weaken the Soviet Union and devolve many key powers to 9 republics, the Conservatives' window of opportunity to repeat the kind of military clampdown last tried in the Baltics in January was fast closing.
The 3 Baltic states, as well as Armenia, as well as Georgia, would have been outside the Soviet Union, and that was something that the hardliners in the government, in the KGB, in the military, were simply not going to allow to happen.
Add to this a military high command alarmed by the new Strategic Arms Treaty, the concessions Gorbachev forced them to make, and the hardware other treaties forced them to destroy, plus the performance of American weaponry in the Gulf, and the failure of Soviet weaponry to match it, and the ignominious withdrawals from Eastern Europe and Afghanistan. So the hardline alliance of disillusionment with Gorbachev was complete, the military reinforcing the KGB's neo-Stalinist security system, which even through the years of glasnost and perestroika has remained firmly in place and intact.
Or they'll have a much higher profile, and they'll be a good deal bolder, because they clearly will feel that their actions are now sanctioned by those who exercise authority.
A key question tonight is the likely political and military reliability of Red Army troops like this Guards division based near Moscow. During a visit by ITN 3 weeks ago, the base commander told me his troops were now non-political, no longer representing the interests of the Communist Party, but those of the state. At the same time, his conscripts were engaged in live firing practice, but many Western analysts have growing doubts about the willingness of many troops to obey an order to fire on fellow Soviet citizens.
Here, the former Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, said she hoped the Soviet people would now throw their support behind Mr. Boris Yeltsin. ITN's political editor, Michael Brunson, asked Mrs. Thatcher if she'd expected Mr. Gorbachev to go in this way.
No, I didn't think it would come to this, but please don't speak of Mr. Gorbachev as if he were in the past. He may still have a role to play, and a very important one. 7 or 8 months ago, I was very worried because it looked as if the hardline communists were gaining the upper hand again. Then all of a sudden, the difficulties went, and Mr. Gorbachev was negotiating with the republics, which was absolutely right, and it looked as if we were getting many, many more moves to a genuine Western kind of economy. It may have been because he was so successful that those true hardline communists who want dictatorship for themselves and not power for the people moved at this time.
What now should the reaction of Western countries, and above all, what should the reaction be of this country, particularly when it comes to this question of defence?
This is not a time to go ahead with implementing the proposed cuts. It's a time to keep things as they are until we have reassessed the situation both in this country and in NATO.
So let me be clear, your view is that there should be not a single reduction, any soldier, sailor or airman now, because of the new situation?
My view is we should pause and not go ahead with implementing those proposed cuts. Don't forget, the changes in the Soviet Union came about first because Mr. Gorbachev, but also equal first, because the West made it clear to the then Soviet Union, the full-blooded communist Soviet Union, that they could never win militarily or by threat of military action. It may be that Mr. Yeltsin will stand up for democracy and have all of the people with him. After all, he's the person who has the authority of being elected by the people. In a democracy, the army serves the elected government. It does not have rights and powers of its own.
Members of the Soviet community in Britain have been trying desperately to contact their friends and family in the Soviet Union to make sure they're safe. Many of them fear the worst for their families and their homeland. Some Soviet visitors are expected to seek asylum here to escape the crackdown they fear they'll face if they do go home.
When the Bolshoi Opera and Leningrad Philharmonic Orchestra arrived at Edinburgh today for the festival, they knew nothing of the coup and turmoil they'd left behind. When told that Gorbachev had been overthrown, their smiles and cheer turned to defiance and despair. The conductor of the Leningrad Orchestra says it's a catastrophe.
If the Conservatives seize the power, it will be very bad for all of us. I prefer to be hungry and free rather than in prison with full belly.
Other Soviets visiting Britain were also contemplating the future. 19 chess masters competing in London were left desperate for news from home. Many of them Latvians, fearing further persecution, considered defecting.
It is dangerous. I think it is tragedy for us, for my nation.
And now we don't know what to do. Now we have the feeling that we cannot return back because it's maybe the dark times may be repeated.
And it was a day of anxious watching and waiting for Soviets living here. They felt stunned, but every piece of news was vital. The family of Sergei Tikhonov, his sister Olga and her daughter Nina are in Leningrad, now under a state of emergency.
I feel I'm half dreaming. You know, I can't believe that. Just imagine your city, tanks in London, and you'll understand what I feel. I can't believe to the end.
All day they tried phoning home. They say they'll keep trying until they know their parents are safe.
Other news here, shop sales went up again last month slightly. July's figure was up 0.3%. In June, retail sales were up 1.5%.
A British businessman shot dead in Turkey has been named as Mr. Andrew Blake. Mr. Blake, who was 33 and worked for the Commercial Union Insurance Company, was attacked as he arrived at his office in Istanbul. Two different Turkish groups have claimed that they carried out the killing.
The England and former Spurs soccer star Paul Gascoigne has been charged with 2 offences of causing actual bodily harm. They relate to an incident outside a restaurant in Newcastle on Tyne last month. He'll appear in front of Newcastle magistrates on September the 9th. Cricket, Essex moved closer to the lead in the Britannic Assurance County Championship. Essex beat Notts by an innings and 12. Derbyshire beat Lancashire by 5 wickets. Hampshire beat Leicester, who are at the bottom, by 2 wickets. Worcester and Graham Hick beat Surrey by 3 wickets. Drawn, Notts and Somerset, Yorkshire and Glamorgan.
And tonight's main news again, the overthrow of Mikhail Gorbachev by hardline communists. World leaders have reacted with dismay and concern. President Bush cut short his holiday and returned for urgent consultations at the White House. And here Mr. Major said he hoped the Soviet reform process begun by Mr. Gorbachev would continue. He's ended some economic help to the Soviet Union and said he thinks a European summit is not very likely. After the coup, thousands of Muscovites took to the streets to protest. They argued with troops and chanted, "Fascism shall not triumph." The Russian President Boris Yeltsin called for a general strike. He said the clouds of terror and dictatorship are gathering over the country. They must not be allowed to bring eternal night. The country's new leaders first appeared at a news conference and said Mr. Gorbachev was tired and needed a rest. And tonight, thousands of people have mounted a vigil to protect the Russian parliament.
And that's the news at 10 tonight. Good night.
Now's the time to come to Pizza Hut for the summertime family special. Order 2 medium pan pizzas, choose any 2 tasty toppings for each from our huge selection, and you can feed a family of 4 for under £10. Freshly made dough, loads of everyone's favourite toppings, and 2 layers of cheese. That's the way to feed the family. The summertime family special. Order 2 medium pan pizzas with any 2 tasty toppings and feed 4 hungry people for under £10. Eat in, take away, or delivery where available. Pizza Hut feeds a family of 4 for under £10.
If you're a first-time buyer, N&P can offer you a special discounted rate mortgage. N&P, no one's busier on your behalf.
The Sierra has defined the way most cars look today. Now, the Sierra Chasseur is redefining what you should expect of today's family car. And the price? There is only one.
Former world snooker champion Dennis Taylor ready for action. Bow tie nicely tied, waistcoat firmly buttoned. The all-important cue, of course. And the all-important glasses, complete with the spare pair he got absolutely free at the Vision Express, 2 for the price of 1 sale. All set, Dennis?
Don't forget the 1-hour service.
Oh, yes, at Vision Express. They make 95% of all glasses within the hour.
Buy 1 pair, get 1 free in the 2 for 1 sale at Vision Express, Grimsby, Hull, Leeds, Middlesbrough and Sheffield.
Because of the extended news bulletin, our episode with Thomas Magnum, PI, will begin in 10 minutes at 11 o'clock and prisoner cell block H at 11:55.
Good evening. Well, while Hurricane Bob continues to plague the eastern seaboard of America, over this side of the Atlantic, we're in for a couple of quite quiet days. Well, basically what we've got is an area of high pressure. It'll work its way slowly but surely eastwards across the country. That'll keep a lot of us fine and dry through Tuesday and through Wednesday as well. But for the second half of the week, I'm afraid it's all downhill. High pressure replaced by low pressure, and with it bands of cloud and some quite heavy rain at times. I think particularly some thundery rain in the southeast. But I think by the weekend things turning cooler and fresher again. That's all in the future. Let's enjoy the sunshine. For most of the country tomorrow, the day dawns fine, dry, plenty of sun too. Along these southern counties, though, you will find it rather cloudy to begin with. Perhaps just the odd patch of drizzle, particularly in the Channel Islands. As we go through the day, that'll quickly go away, and I think fair amount of sunshine for everybody. But it's that northwestern corner that we'll see the thickest cloud. See some patches of rain too running their way up across northwest Scotland and in towards Shetland, but even that will tend to die out as the day goes on. Quite a warm day generally across the country, 20, 21, 68, up to 70, perhaps up to 73 in the southeast. It's that northwestern corner again that stays cooler with quite a brisk wind in from the southwest. 16 there is 61. That's it from me. Very good night to you.
Good evening. An investigation has begun into the death of a man found hanging from the bars of his police cell in Leeds at the weekend. It was the 3rd such incident at the city's Bridewell in the last 5 months. John Shires reports.
The body of Paul Orange, who was married with 2 children and lived in the Holbeck area of Leeds, was discovered in his cell at the Bridewell on Saturday morning, 3 hours after being arrested for alleged drunkenness. West Yorkshire's Assistant Chief Constable Donald Shaw has issued a statement expressing the force's deepest sympathy to Mr Orange's widow and his family for the tragedy. An investigation supervised by the Police Complaints Authority and headed by a senior officer from Greater Manchester is already underway. It'll no doubt take into account 2 previous incidents at the Bridewell this year. In March, 26-year-old Alan Clements hanged himself with his trousers after being arrested for alleged drink driving. An open verdict was recorded at the inquest into his death. And earlier the same day, a 24-year-old man made an unsuccessful attempt to hang himself with his shoelaces after being charged with theft. Meanwhile, an inquiry is underway after a man apparently collapsed and died in a cell at Bridge Street Police Station in Sheffield. 34-year-old Dean Patrick Kelly from the Steel Bank area of the city had been arrested for drunkenness. And in a 3rd incident over the weekend, a prisoner was found hanged in his cell at Wakefield's top security jail. William Patrick, jailed for life for murder in 1988, was discovered by warders hanged by a sheet.
A mother has appeared before magistrates in Sheffield charged with murdering her own daughter. Ian McBride was in court.
The body of 7-year-old Natasha Lucas was found in the bath of her home in Claywood Drive in Sheffield on Friday. A post-mortem examination has failed to establish how she died. Her mother, Helen, who's 26, has been charged with her murder. In court, Mrs. Lucas appeared with her hair swept back in a ponytail and wearing a blue T-shirt, jeans and a black bomber jacket. She stood with her head bowed during the 2-minute court appearance and nodded simply when asked if she understood the charges. Reporting restrictions were not lifted and there was no application for bail. Mrs. Lucas was remanded in custody until August the 28th.
Detectives searching for the killer of 7-year-old Angela Flaherty from Huddersfield say they're working on an important new lead. They want to trace a youth seen running from the scene of the murder, as Simon Schofield reports.
Detectives hunting Angela's killer stopped dozens of motorists at the weekend in an operation designed at seeking more information about possible sightings. And one positive lead has emerged, a youth seen running close to the scene of the murder.
One particular lead we are pursuing at this moment in time is a sighting of a youth, a white youth, who was seen to jump from the wall. This wall bounds the area where the Kilner Bank, as in fact only 50 or 75 yards from the area where the body was found. He's a white youth, aged 16 to 17 years of age. He's 5'8", very slim build. He's got collar length, light brown hair, and was dressed in beige clothing.
How strong do you consider this lead to be?
Well, it's at the right time, or within the time. It's 6 p.m. 6 p.m. on that Saturday evening, the 10th of August. And obviously, until we can eliminate this man, we've got to be interested in it.
Anyone who has information which may help is asked to contact the police at Huddersfield.
And hundreds of people in Huddersfield were put on alert tonight after a chemical spillage in the Sheepridge area of the town. Firemen wearing protective suits tackled the spillage of the chemical into a stream at Ash Brow Mills. Police officers in cars used loudhailers to warn residents in the districts of Sheepridge, Fartown and Red Doles to close their windows. An expert has been called in to try to identify the chemical and its source. Lincoln is considering submitting a bid to become Britain's next environment city. The Royal Society for Nature Conservation is looking for 3 places to become green role models for other cities around the country. Wendy Homeward reports.
The National Environment City programme is led by the Lincoln-based Royal Society for Nature Conservation. Now the Society's home city is to consider putting in a bid to follow in the footsteps of Leicester, the first ever environment city. The initiative is designed to draw the public, private and voluntary sectors together to improve the quality of life in urban areas.
Cities, for instance, which really do have a long way to go as far as cleaning up the environment's concerned. Also places which feel that they've been doing very well over a number of years. So it's not something that we're saying we're going for inner cities or we're going for places which have already shown a deep commitment. We're going to assess each bid as it comes in on their merits.
Lincoln already has a variety of recycling schemes, but the successful bidders will also have to show a strong commitment in other areas, such as the economy and work and housing. Lincoln could be among more than 40 places around the country, hoping to become Britain's next environment city.
That's it from the Calder team for tonight. We're back with more news at 5 to 10 in the morning. Hope you can join us then, but for now, good night.
Hello again. Well, I don't know whether you can cast your mind back to August Bank Holiday 1986, but in fact we had Hurricane Charlie affecting the weather then. And this forthcoming holiday weekend we may well have the remnants of a hurricane again, but this time it's Hurricane Bob. Let's have a look where Hurricane Bob might be by early on Saturday morning. Well, there you are. We can see it's just approaching Southwest Island. By then, of course, it's not a hurricane. It's just downgraded to a low pressure, but it looks as though it may well bring us some unsettled weather during the holiday weekend. Anyway, let's now move on and have a look at the latest rainfall figures. You can see we are doing very poorly indeed. Only 5 millimetres. At this stage of the month, we should be looking for 33 millimetres. I don't think we'll beat that record of 9 millimetres, though, with a rather unsettled outlook. From the rainfall onto the sunshine, and we're up there, 118 hours. The average at this stage of the month would be 94 hours. Right, well, let's now move back and have a look at today's weather. And this was this afternoon's satellite picture. We had a lot of cloud over the region. And the important thing now is that cold front. That cold front, as you can see, clearer weather behind it. It has been moving very, very slowly towards us during the course of the afternoon and this evening. And at present, it's down just into Lincolnshire. So if we have a look at tonight's weather, it's down there ahead of the front in the southeast of the region that we do have a lot of cloud and still some spits of rain around. But elsewhere over the region, it is dry, well-broken cloud. The wind's round to the northwest. Now, it looks as though all that rain will clear before the end of the night. A lot of clear skies in the north, but remaining rather cloudy in the extreme southeast of the region. And temperatures, a little bit of a variation, as low as 10 centigrade in the north, but still as high as 13 in the south. Tomorrow morning, we start off with the best and brightest weather in the north of the region. Still a lot of cloud in the southeast, but that cloud will be clearing away. The wind's becoming light westerly, little bits of cloud bubbling up in places, and temperatures fairly reasonable, going up to 21 degrees centigrade, that's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Now the summary chart.
On Tuesday, a man is denied access to his son.
Jackie, all I want to do is see Matthew for a minute.
Well, that sounds fair enough, Mrs. Corbett.
No.
I'd like to say this. This! The only way I can be killed is a stake through the heart. But who can afford stakes these days?
Please, if you can do anything, do it!
Students in this school are dying.
Like I said, man, the school belongs to us.
Tuesday evening on Yorkshire Television.
4 new miniseries, all true stories coming soon.
You're a spy for the Russians.
Family of Spies.
Teach you everything I know. His father's son, just between you and me. Okay?
Voyage of Terror, starring Burt Lancaster.
We have no choice but to hijack this ship.
People will always be fascinated by you.
Starring Farrah Fawcett, the richest woman in the world. The Barbara Hutton story. One of ITV's most successful miniseries was Heroes. Now there's the long-awaited sequel. All this and the Rugby World Cup coming soon.
Perfect.
Now, here's Magnum and Tiger's Fan.